Good morning and welcome to day 59 of Bible in a Year as we explore the Holy Bible from Genesis to Revelations in 365 days. We're following together the adventure timeline created by Jeff Cavins. We're following in the New International Version. My name is Pastor Jay Lutz, and today we are going through the book of Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Psalms 93. Numbers, we're going through chapters 8 and 9, where the Lord speaks to Moses about setting up lampstands, ordination of the Levites, the celebration of the Passover, and God's presence in the tent of meeting, that is more specifically in the tent of testimony, where the Ark of the Covenant is, and how when he is in the cloud above, that the people don't go anywhere, and then when his cloud moves, then they are able to move themselves. Deuteronomy 8, God gives Moses and the Israelites a long list of commands they must follow in order to show their faithfulness before God. And Psalm 93 is a psalm attributed to King David, and it's a psalm of praise, a royal psalm. Usually this was used during royal events. Let's get started. Numbers chapter 8 to 9. Chapter 8. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and say to him, when you set up 7 lamps, they are to light the area in front of the lampstand." Aaron did so. He set up the lamps so that they faced forward on the lampstands, just as the Lord commanded Moses. This is how the lampstand was made. It was made of hammered gold, from its base and its blossom. The lampstand was made exactly like the pattern the Lord had shown Moses. The Lord said to Moses, "Take the Levites from among the other Israelites and make them ceremonially clean. To purify them, do this: sprinkle the water of cleansing on them. Then have them shave their whole bodies and wash their clothes, and so purify themselves. Have them take a young bull with its grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil. Then you are to take a second young bull for a sin offering. Bring the Levites to the front of the tent of meeting and assemble the whole Israelite community. They are to bring the Levites before the Lord, and the Israelites are to lay their hands on them. Aaron is to present the Levites before the Lord as a wave offering from the Israelites, so they may be ready to do the work of the Lord. After the Levites lay their hands on the heads of the bulls, use the one for a sin offering to the Lord and the other for a burnt offering, to make atonement for the Levites. Have the Levites stand in front of Aaron and his sons, and then present them as a wave offering to the Lord. In this way you are to set the Levites apart from the other Israelites, and the Levites will be mine. After you have purified the Levites and presented them as a wave offering, they are to come to do their work at the tent of meeting. They are the Israelites who are to be given wholly to me. I have taken them as my own in place of the firstborn, the first male offspring, from every Israelite woman. Every firstborn male in Israel, and whether male or animal, man or animal, is mine. When I struck down all the firstborns in Egypt, I set them apart for myself. And I have taken the Levites in place of all the firstborn sons in Israel. Of all the Israelites, I have given the Levites as gifts to Aaron and his sons to do the work of the tent of the meeting on behalf of the Israelites, and to make atonement for them, so that no plague will strike the Israelites when they go near the sanctuary. Moses, Aaron, and the whole Israelite community did with the Levites just as the Lord commanded Moses. The Levites purified themselves and washed their clothes. Then Aaron presented them as wave offerings before the Lord and made atonement for them to purify them. After that, the Levites came to do their work at the tent of meeting under the supervision of Aaron and his sons. They did with the Levites just as the Lord commanded Moses. The Lord said to Moses, "This applies to the Levites. Men 25 years old or more should come to take part in the work at the tent of meeting. But at the age of 50, they must retire from their regular service and work no longer. They may assist their brothers in performing their duties at the tent of meeting, but they themselves must not do the work. This, then, is how you are to assign the responsibility of the Levites." Chapter 9. The Lord spoke to Moses in the desert of Sinai in the first month of the second year after they came out of Egypt. He said, "Have the Israelites celebrate the Passover at the appointed time. celebrated at the appointed time at twilight on the 14th day of this month, in accordance with all its rules and regulations. So Moses told the Israelites to celebrate the Passover, and they did so in the desert of Sinai at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. The Israelites did everything just as the Lord commanded Moses. But some of them could not celebrate the Passover on that day because they were ceremonially unclean on account of a dead body. So they came to Moses and Aaron that same day and said to Moses, "We have become unclean because of this dead body, but why should we be kept from presenting the Lord's offering with the other Israelites at the appointed time?" Moses answered them, "Wait until I find out what the Lord commands concerning you." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, when any of you or your descendants are unclean because of a dead body or are away on the journey, you must still celebrate the Lord's Passover. They are to celebrate it on the 14th day of the second month at twilight. They are to eat the lamb together with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They must not leave any of it till morning or break any of its bones. When they celebrate the Passover, they must follow all regulations. But if a man who is ceremonially clean and not on a journey fails to celebrate the Passover, the person must be cut off from this people because he did not present the Lord's offering at the appointed time. That man will bear the consequences of his sin. An alien living amongst you who wants to celebrate the Lord's Passover must do so in accordance with its rules and regulations. You must have the same regulations for the alien and the native born. On the day the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, was set up, the cloud covered it. From evening till morning, the cloud above the tabernacle looked like fire. That is how it continued to be. The cloud covered it, and at night it looked like fire. Whenever the cloud lifted from above the tent, the Israelites set out. Wherever the cloud settled, the Israelites encamped. At the Lord's command, the Israelites set out, and at his command, they encamped. As long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle, they remained in the camp. When the cloud remained over the tabernacle a long time, the Israelites obeyed the Lord's order and did not set out. Sometimes the cloud was over the tabernacle only a few days. At the Lord's command, they would encamp. That is his command, they would set up. Sometimes the cloud stayed only from evening till morning, and when it lifted in the morning, they set out. Whether by day or by night, whenever the cloud lifted, they set out. Whether the cloud stayed over the tabernacle for 2 days or a month or a year, the Israelites would remain in camp and not set out. But when it lifted, they would set out. At the Lord's command, they encamped, and at the Lord's command, they set out. They obeyed the Lord's order in accordance with his command through Moses. Here ends the first reading. Our second reading comes from Deuteronomy chapter 8. Be careful to follow every command I give you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land that the Lord your God has promised on oath to your forefathers. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way through the desert those 40 years to humble you and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your fathers had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Your clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Know then in your heart that as a man disciples his son, so the Lord God disciples you. Observe the commands of the Lord your God, walking in his way and revering him. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with streams and pools of water, with springs flowing in the valley and hills, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey, a land where bread will not be scarce, and you will lack nothing, a land where the rocks are iron, and you can dig copper out of the hills. When you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees I am giving you to this day. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, and when your herds and flocks grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. He led you through the vast and dreadful desert, that thirsty and waterless land with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the desert, something your fathers had never known, to humble you and test you so that in the end it might go well with you. You may say to yourself, my power and my strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant which he swore to your forefathers, as it is today. If you ever forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and worship and bow down to them, I testify against you today that you will surely be destroyed. Like the nations the Lord destroyed before you, so you will be destroyed for not obeying the Lord your God. And the second reading, and the last reading is Psalm 93, a royal psalm. The Lord reigns, he is robed in majesty. The Lord is robed in majesty and is armed with strength. The world is firmly established, it cannot be moved. Your throne was established long ago. You are from all eternity. The seas have lifted up, O Lord. The seas have lifted up their voices. The seas have lifted up their pounding waves. Mightier than the thunder of the great waters. Mightier than the breakers of the sea. The Lord on high is mighty. Your statutes stand firm. Holiness adorns your house for endless days, O Lord. Here ends our reading. I love these royal psalms. They're just so beautiful. His throne is established long ago. You see in a lot of these psalms like this, they have repetitive verses that build upon each other. It's always the second verse is like the first, but it builds on a bit. Like, for example, it says, the Lord reigns, he is robed in majesty. He is robed in majesty and is armed with strength. Right? Or the seas have lifted up, O Lord. The seas have lifted up their voices. The seas have lifted up their pounding waves. Here it says, so there's 3 times in this verse. Or mightier than the thunder, mightier than the breakers. The Lord on high is mighty. It's like building up, like a song builds up to the climax, and then we get this climax at the end. Your statues have stand firm. Holiness adorns your house for endless days. God is our rock. He's our fortress. He's our statue that we can stand strong on. And in his holiness, it adorns all beauty. All things in the earth are adorned by God's holiness. Beautiful. We also hear about Deuteronomy. God gives reasons he gives commandments for them to remember him, for them to be constantly reminded that he is the God that goes before them and continues to lead them in the desert and has led them in the desert in order to test them and strengthen them, that they might know. And we hear this, that remember Jesus quotes this part. He says that man does not live on bread alone, but that he lives upon every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Jesus directly quotes this to the devil when he is tempted. And so may we ever have that on our lips in remembrance of who leads us and where we go. And lastly, we read Numbers chapters 8 and 9. Hear about the Levites being set apart and God reminding them again that they are to be set apart as the people who take care of the Holy of Holies, this tent of meeting, this tent of testimony, in where God sits enthroned on high, and not on high in his kingdom, on earth, which is an incredible thing to think about, that God was encamped in this tent on earth. And then the Passover, the celebration of the Passover, the people were reminded that God saved them from the Egyptians, and that they're to celebrate that, and that ultimately that God sits in this cloud, and that he could be there for a day or he could be there for years, and yet if he was there, they were there. If God raised the cloud, they would set out, and so they were at the full mercy of God. But how amazing would that be, to have God continually encamped with you. My prayer is that you act as if God is encamped with you, and that wherever he goes, you go, and that you obey the things of God in order that your days may be well. May your day be well this day. Ask that you might pray for me as we go along this journey, as I pray for you that you might grow in the knowledge and wisdom and fear of the Lord. Have a blessed day.